Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. Today's guest, Patti Handy, has spent a combined 20 years as a financial advisor and mortgage advisor. However, it was only after she experienced a heartbreaking divorce that shattered her world and made her feel overwhelmed and fearful about her financial future as a single mother, and where she made costly mistakes out of desperation despite her background in finance. Patti now is dedicated to sharing her knowledge and experience to help women overcome financial challenges and achieve fulfillment and joy in their lives. She acknowledges the difficulties that women face when it comes to money and aims to provide them with the tools and guidance they need to navigate financial decisions confidently. Patti's story of resilience and transformation serves as an inspiration for those who may be going through similar challenges, offering hope and the promise of thriving even in the face of adversity. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, welcome Patti Handy to the podcast.
Thank you, Claire. I appreciate you having me here.
No, I can't wait to delve into the subject that we're going to cover off today, which is finance. All money matters, or money matters. I don't know how you would want to say it.
Yes. Money is one of those conversations that always piques people's interest, right?
I know. And they say money makes the world go round, right? But I don't think it makes you happy, but it's handy if you've got some. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And it's challenging if you don't.
Yeah. No, too right. So look, first of all, tell us a little bit about you and how you got to deal with people, because primarily you deal with like single mums or single parents. Oh, let's not say single mums, but single parents who are in a bit of strife and need to sort of just sort out their finances, have a bit of advice around if they've got a bit of money, how do they invest it and various different things like that. Am I right?
Yeah, the primary clientele that I work with is divorced, widowed, and single women, and those that are basically doing life alone. Yeah. And as we navigate life alone, oftentimes the money piece can be very scary and intimidating, and we question our own decisions. We wonder if we're doing the right things, and just lack of clarity, lack of confidence creates a little bit of a challenge. So that's primarily who I work with, although the lessons of money applies to everybody. But my coaching generally, puts us into that.
Well, becoming a single mum, whether it's via divorce, a death, unfortunately a death, or by your own choice, right? I know when I became a single parent, the anxiety that money and how am I going to survive, and oh my gosh, how much is daycare and how much is this and what am I going to do? I don't get any other financial support, right? It is me and that is it, right? So that worried me, right? Because I was like, oh, I've got nobody to fall back on, right? This is me, my money. If my money stops, then I'm, we're in trouble, right? So how did you how did you get involved in all of this?
Well, it originated quite interestingly when I went through my divorce. I remember a time shortly after my divorce when I was still navigating just the grief and the trauma and the sadness. My son was 18 months old at the time, and there was so much overwhelm. And I remember laying there in a fetal position crying, just thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I had this very strange download. I call it a God wink, that it was, you're going to be okay because you know how to manage your money. And it was very random because I wasn't at that moment, I wasn't thinking about the money or the financial piece. I was the person in the marriage that handled the money. My husband, ex-husband, didn't understand investing in money, and he let me handle it. But I knew, sometime later, after I kind of came out of that dark cloud, that I wanted to somehow work with women and serve, because I know this is a very critical and a scary place. But I had to focus on my son, obviously, and I wanted to focus on my son, and I went on to work in the mortgage industry for many years as a mortgage advisor, and that allowed me to work at home and around my son's schedule. And I was a full-time mom and a full-time employee, and it worked out really well. And then I went into financial planning. I was a financial advisor after that. And between the mortgage world and the financial world, I heard lots of conversations from ladies who would come in the office or call in, and just the same theme would constantly occur, which was, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know where to start. My husband took care of everything. I'm afraid. I don't want to run out of money. I don't want to be a burden to my kids. I'm embarrassed. I have shame around this, and I don't even know what to do. And as a financial advisor, I could, there was so much conversation that was allowed with time-wise, and I decided to jump ship and address that need, which was more of a coaching role. And so I left my role as a financial advisor and jumped into financial coaching. And I love it. I feel like I'm making a bigger impact. I'm able to have those deep conversations and have those, personal conversations and get into the nitty gritties.
Okay, so let's unpack that then. What's the difference between a financial advisor and a financial coach?
Yeah, great question. A lot of people ask that. So as a financial advisor, we took the client's money in. We managed the money. We invested the money for them. We sat and talked about tax strategies. We would navigate the actual mechanical pieces of the investing. We would advise on investing. We would, tell them how we're going to invest their funds, do the asset allocation ourselves, and basically manage those funds. As a financial coach, it's part financial strategist and part life coach. So I'm able to educate my clients on the mechanics of money and the investing so that they can learn to do it themselves. Or if they choose to work with an advisor, they know the questions to ask and they understand what the advisor is talking about. But I don't manage money. I don't take money in. I don't advise a client like, oh, you should put 10% of your assets in this portfolio and 10% in this. I don't advise clients, but I help them understand their entire financial picture and give suggestions and thoughts about, you should be considering, this much in the market, this much in a safe, asset class like fixed income or bonds or money market or something that allows them to access those funds, and why you want to do that. So it's a lot of education. It's about really walking hand in hand and really just financial literacy. Oftentimes you walk into a financial advisor company and you may not feel comfortable or confident. You just trust that the advisor is doing their best. And they, as a fiduciary, they do uphold that, the client's best interest at heart. But I'd like to empower ladies with understanding what's going on behind the scenes.
There's more a knowledge, education-based sort of thing.
Yes. And there's a lot of life coaching intertwined with that. I deal with a lot of the behavioral side of the money mindset, the relationship with our money, things that typically advisors don't get into. With my coaching, there's a lot of self-care. There's a lot of how to rebuild your credit. If you're going to buy a house on your own, what do lenders look for? These are topics that typically advisors won't talk about. I address the holistic piece of a woman and address the entire financial house.
And what do you find are the common struggles? So somebody who comes straight out of a divorce, say, or a separation, or even a bereavement, right? What are the common struggles that you see those women to have to deal with?
Well, it's definitely several-fold, depending upon at what point they reach out to me. Oftentimes, if it's very fresh and raw, they're still very vulnerable. They're dealing with the trauma and the grief. Oftentimes, they're working with a therapist and addressing some of that, because I'm not a licensed therapist. That's not my specialty. I heard this one time, and it's a perfect analogy. A therapist is like an archaeologist, where a life coach is more like an architect.
Oh, okay.
it's a very great way to explain the difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
So if they're working with, the grief and the sadness and the trauma and dealing with some of that still, I can help them to a point, but they really need the help of a therapist as well. And I had therapy when I was going through my divorce, and gosh, it was a godsend. I mean, I was incredibly supported by my therapy. But once they're out of that dark cloud and they're kind of getting back into life and they're trying to manage their things in life, it's okay. Where do I start? What do I do with my funds? What should I focus on? I don't even know what to look at when it comes to investing. I'm not even sure how to, get my savings in place. I sometimes some clients dealing with debt. How do I get out of this debt? How do I, get this paid off while I'm also trying to plan for retirement? And the ages vary that I work with, so it really depends on that particular gal's, story. But it's run the gambit. But oftentimes, more times than not, it's like I don't even know where to start. So
Wow.
we start where they are. I start where they are. So if they're at the
And that can be
beginning,
all different places, can it? It can be
sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what's one of the first things so I'm lucky, right? I'm like you, right? I was like, managed the finances, knew what bills came in and out, like still do to this day, roughly know, give or take a couple of hundred, what money's coming out of my bank account on a monthly basis so that I know how much I need to earn and what I can adjust regarding if I have a month which is below par or whatever. Or that I've got or that I've got money that I need to spend on, like, the car's broken down. So I've got to go and pay money out and spend it on the car, right? And where I put things. And I regularly save and all of these things, right? So that I can do stuff with my son and not have to worry, right? But like, if somebody hasn't had anything to do with the finances, hasn't got a clue, right? And they're left in the family house, what would you say is one of the first things that they need to sort out and do?
The first thing that we do in that case is we look at their current financial situation. And I use the analogy of this example. If I were to blindfold you and drop you in the middle of the country and take off your blindfold and take away your phone and your GPS and any way to navigate home, and I say, okay, get home, the first question you would say is, well, where am I? Right?
Yeah.
You need to know where you are in order to know how to get home. So we start with where they are. And that means we take a look at their entire net worth. We look at their assets. We look at their liabilities. We look at what's coming in and what's going out, cash flow. So what monies are coming in with different sources, what money is going out and how. So whether they have a formal budget laid out, if they don't, I've got a spending tracker that I give them and I say, fill this out. I want to know where your money is going. I encourage them to look back at both their bank statements, which show their debit card usage, and I then look at the credit card statements, which is their credit card usage, obviously. And between the two, I want them to go through and highlight the expenses in different categories. So all the groceries are maybe in yellow, and highlight all the yellow. Go down and go, okay, well, the utilities, maybe do in blue. So highlight in blue. And so, categorize your expenses and your expenditures in different colors so that you can, quickly at a snapshot go, oh, wow, I've got a lot of pink, which is eating out. I've spent so much money eating out, I didn't realize. And you add that up and you go, okay, there's a hole in my boat and I'm going to sink if I don't get this taken care of. So it's really about being mindful of their current situation. So that's where we start. And more times than not, there's money going out that they don't even realize that they spend on just things here and there. You think, oh, $10 there, $20 there. But at the end of the month, it's like, okay, I just blew through $400 that I could have used to pay down my debt or, whatever. And It's not about counting any penny and watching every little dollar, but it might be that for now, depending upon your situation. If you're dealing with debt and you've got to address that, it might be that things feel constrictive, at least for a little bit. But that isn't the story of your life. That's not going to be forever. And I help people try to understand that because it could be, pretty daunting if you think, oh my gosh, I've got to watch every penny the rest of my life. Well, no, you don't. But during this time of transition, let's just be mindful and look at the best use of our money.
Well, yeah, and and I'm a bit of an Amazon fiend. I'm the worst. And so sometimes I'll go, right, that's it. I'm not buying anything online. Like, I'm not going online and buying anything. So I won't charge anything to my credit card. I just won't buy anything, clothes, shoes, handbags, stuff for the house. I mean, if it's essential, then I'll buy it, right? So if we need to eat it, or it's been broken and we need it, because I don't know, we're going to have a problem, like the car or something like that, then I will do it. And I do that maybe not every other month, because I don't think I could go without Amazon every other month, which sounds really sad, doesn't it? But, I'll do it like maybe 1 month, 1 month in 3, right? And you'll be surprised how much you save. Jesus. And it's lovely when you get that credit card bill come in and it's like not much on there. Oh, don't. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And if you're in a position where you have some discretionary income and you do a couple of Amazon purchases, that's fine. But if you're trying to pay, I'm not saying you, but if somebody's trying to pay off debt, they've got to be aware that, okay, I need to stay off Amazon. I need to stay off of these things and focus on paying down this credit card.
Yeah.
At 20% or whatever it is they are these days.
I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those conversations that it's very individual, for sure.
Yeah. But it's like, do I really need it? Because there are some stuff I've bought and I've gone, oh my God, I haven't even used that. So it's the question of like, do I need it? Am I going to use it? And also being conscious that you're not actually spending money and buying stuff because there's a massive hole in your life in some other area. And you're just, the little buzz that you get when something appears on the doorstep and you go, oh, it's a present for me. No, it's not really, because it's just pushing you further and further into debt or whatever. And it's just not helping.
And there's so much behind what you just said. That's such a great point. And the reality is that if we are in those habits, the habitual spending, I'm not saying, again, you do this, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no.
In the habitual situation of spending, there is a trigger behind that. There is an emotional trigger. And that's why they call it retail therapy. It is you're either bored, you're sad, you're depressed, you're dealing with some emotion. And it is a dopamine hit. It is like, I need to, this is kind of cool. And you get it, you're like, what the heck? Why did I buy this thing? So, my first question is, is it an ask? I mean, ask yourself, is it a need or a want? If it's a need because something broke, then okay, that's one story. If it's a want because you feel like you want it, then give it 3 or 4 days and then go back to it and go, do I really want it still? And is it worth this? Or is my financial freedom day and my retirement and my kids' college and my future more important than this thing, the fix that this might give me very temporarily?
Yeah.
And after that time, you have time to kind of process that and go, no, I don't think I want to buy this.
No, exactly. Never buy something on the spur of the moment. And I always say to myself, am I going to regret it if I don't buy this? Because there are times where I've gone, oh, I wish I'd bought those shoes, right? Because 3 months later, I'm still thinking about them, right? So, but there are other things that I go, am I going to regret buying this? No, not really. So, but mine, that's really around shoes and clothes, right? Because I go, oh, it doesn't really fit, but I'll buy it because I'll fit into it in 2 or 3 months' time. You're never going to do that, people, right? Just don't fall into that trap, right? Don't think, oh, I'll lose the weight and I'll fit into this. No, you won't. Get something that fits now, right? So, I agree. I've done that. There's so many things I've thrown out that I've never worn. And I go, oh, I'll get fit. No, you won't. You're a single parent, right? You have a child. You're not going to get on that treadmill every day for 3 hours to get fit, to fit into the pair of clothes that you need. So it's all good. It's all good. So, okay. So just being conscious, I suppose, of your spending is one way to try and focus at getting you out of debt and stuff like that. But like, what about if you sit there and you find out that, and I've heard this in several situations, where you sit there and you haven't been managing the money, your ex-partner's been managing the money, and they they're deceased now, and you then find out that your situation, your financial situation is a nightmare, right? And you're in debt and all of these things, right? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, depending upon how complicated that scenario is, you definitely need to sit down with an expert. You need to sit down with either a coach, financial advisor, your CPA, potentially an attorney. You've got to get some help with clarifying all of that cluster mess that you've got going on. And I tell, couples that I deal with, that I've talked to, it's like, you've got to make sure both of you are on the same page and understand where everything is, understand where every asset is, where every credit card statement is, how much we have in credit card debt, what are the passwords to sign on to these accounts, so that if a spouse does die, there isn't anything that is a surprise to you, and that you're able to navigate that situation with less chaos, versus you being a person where you're like, you know what, you know about money better than I do, you just deal with it, I trust you, which is fine. Most spouses, there's one that's stronger in that than the other, but the person, whether it's the husband or the wife, who doesn't do the actual structural piece of investing, they need to know all the details.
Yeah.
And if there is debt, you need to focus on getting out of that. If there's assets that are mismanaged, you need to get that on track. You need to sit down with an advisor. But yeah, I mean, the first step, you've got to, I mean, depending upon how crazy it is, you need to sit down with an expert.
Yeah.
Trying to get that on is hard.
Because if your name is against something, whether it be a loan or a bank account or a credit card, if you've got joint credit cards or whatever, if you joint in something, right, whatever debt is on that joint something, if your partner does die, you're solely responsible for that debt. It's yours.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, if your name isn't on it and it's your partner's, well, then that gets written off, doesn't it? That debt gets written off. You don't take that debt on board, do you? Sorry, this is a question.
And I think it depends on what state you live in. Like, if you're a community state, then again, this is a question for a CPA. I don't know that if your spouse passes and he or she has a credit card in just their name, because if you're in a community state, you have that joint responsibility. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I would say
double check people.
Yeah, you want to double check on that situation. Talk to your CPA and just confirm.
Can I just ask, CPA? What's CPA? Sorry.
Oh, certified public accountant.
Oh, okay. CPA. There we go. CPA, accountant.
Prepare tax returns.
Yeah. No, I just wondered if anyone out there may not know what a CPA is, and I didn't. So, an accountant, people, talk to your accountant. And in Australia, we all have to submit a tax return every year. So, admittedly, some people do it by themselves, but a lot of people do it via an accountant. So if you've got an accountant who's doing your tax return, go and have a word with them. And it might be an idea, God forbid, but it might be an idea that you actually have a word and find out what your liabilities are with your partner. If there are any partner, husband, wife, whatever, if there are any credit cards or things that are solely in their name, to just go and check out and find out, are you liable? Because they could be running up a massive debt. And then if you're liable, there's going to be a bit of trouble if there's no money in the bank account. So, I
always suggest that individuals run their credit report if they're going through a divorce, run their credit report in their own name and see what is actually attached to them. And they can run, I'm not sure what it is in Australia, but you can run in the States, annualcreditreport.com. Once a year you can run the credit. There's no ding for your credit score. And you can see all of what credit is in your name. So you might have some stuff in your name that you're not even aware of. And it's so old that you forgot about it. So good idea to make sure you check that and make sure there's no errors on that, so you have some time to fix that. And
to fix it all up. And I think in Australia, just look at how to get my credit report on Google, and it'll come up with a whole load of one. I think it's right. It's 1 free, 1 a year or whatever, over here as well. So yeah, no, definitely. Look, it's essential, isn't it, for all of this money malarkey. Now, look, I work. I'm what you would call as a contractor over in Australia, right? So I contract out to various different companies, and because potentially my contract may come to an end, and I might not have a job, or I might be without work for 2 or 3 months at the end of a contract. Hopefully not. It's never been the case in my whole whole lifetime, but you never know, right? So as a single parent, whether you've got a permanent job or not, right, should you have an emergency fund for if you do lose your job and all of those situations? Because I do, but that's because I contract.
Yeah, whether you contract or you're a W-2 employee, you absolutely need to have an emergency fund. And it's, some call it an opportunity fund. But if you are in a situation where, because you're W-2 doesn't mean you're guaranteed your job, right? People get laid off. There's a lot of layoffs happening right now as we speak. You should have at least 6 months of your housing expenses set aside for emergencies. And like just recently, I had my refrigerator die on me, and I had to, pop out $2,300, cash to pay for that.
I know.
And things come up. I had a roof leak, my dishwasher went out. It's like, okay, well, boom, boom, boom. So these things come up. Those are needs. I can't have my roof leaking, when it's raining. So, you absolutely need to have that set aside because
so 6 months.
6 months worth of your housing expenses in a perfect world you have set aside. And it might
so that's your outgoings, not that you would need to have 6 months worth of your salary saved away, but you need at least to be able to cover off 6 months worth of your bills and your expenses. So that includes grocery and kids stuff and all of those sort of things.
Yep.
You need
Housing,
6 months.
Taxes, food, all that. So that if you lost your job, you can still run your house and take care of your kids and feed your family. And so, that's the minimal. And then sometimes, like I mentioned, they call it an opportunity fund because sometimes something comes across your desk and it's an opportunity to get involved with something, whether it's a side hustle or a new business or work with a coach or travel to a place that you wanted to, this, super deal came up. And it's an opportunity that you can do that with that money you have set aside. You don't want to look at that money as play money, but it's also an opportunity to like, okay, this is going to better my life in some capacity, improve my life in some capacity. Let's, tap into that money. And then you replace.
So where should you put that emergency fund? Should it just be put into a savings account that's earning minimal, like blooming interest, right? Like 0.3% or whatever it is. I don't know. No, it's increased a little bit because we're all now feeling the crunch of like the interest rates going up, right? Which is great for saving, but not so great for if you've got debt. But should you be putting it just into a savings account, locking it away and going, right, there you go, like putting it into a box somewhere, or do you invest it?
If you do it as an emergency fund, that does not belong in the stock market. You do not want to invest it in the market because if you need that money and the market's going through a correction or you're having, a down market, the last thing you want to do is to tap into that money when it's gone down, right? Yeah. So the money that you have invested in the stock market should be long-term, meaning anything that you don't touch or need for 7 years or more. Otherwise, the market. The shorter term, 5 to 7 years, you can have in more conservative investments like fixed income, which is bonds, which is less volatile. Yeah. But if you need something for the next couple of years, like let's say you're saving for a down payment on a house, or you've got a big wedding coming up, or some large, expenditure, it's got to go into a short-term savings account of some sort. But having said that, there are alternatives, such as a money market account. Now, again, I'm not sure if that's the same. I think it's the same in Australia, but a money market account is typically a higher yielding account. It's a liquid account. It's a liquid savings account. You can tap into it in a day or two. If you go to somewhere like a Vanguard or a Fidelity or a Schwab, they have money market accounts that are today earning you in the 5% range. That's because the rates are so high.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a variable account, so as the rates go down, it's going to go down. But right now, you're earning 5%, whereas in the bank you're earning 0.2, right?
Yeah.
So now the other caveat that really needs to be disclosed here is that when you've got money in a bank, that's going to be FDIC insured. When you have that money in a money market account at a Vanguard or a Schwab or a Fidelity, that is not FDIC insured. Okay. However, the money market fund, is typically invested in government products.
Yeah.
So it's backed by the government, which, the likelihood of that money market account having issues is highly unlikely, but it's important to know that it is not FDIC insured. So you're not protected, but you're earning, considerably more over, whatever time period you have that money saved away. But it's liquid. You can tap into it quickly.
Yeah, which with an emergency fund is really one of the key things, isn't it? Really, because it's for emergencies.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
So that's handy. That's handy to know, right? Because it's just about where you actually put that money, and it's an emergency, right? So it needs to be safe, and you need to not go, it's okay, I've got 20 grand sitting in that bank account, I'm going to spend that on going to Florida to Disney World, right? Like, it is an emergency for when you lose your job. So, or if you lose your job, but it's there.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. And
the car breaks down and you need a new transmission. I mean, you just don't know.
Somebody smashes into your car and then, you need a brand new car. So, and if it's still there when you retire, well, happy days. Then you can go to Florida, or wherever. So, okay. All right. So look, you mentioned it a little while ago. So we've done single parents, right? Key things really are get yourself out of debt as much as you possibly can. Admittedly, if you've got a home loan or something like that, then you want to be, like paying that off every month and trying to get that down as much as you can. But these are big money investments, aren't they? So like they go over a period of time, but at least get all of the other peripherals like credit cards and things like that. Don't stack them up to their maximum every month, and be paying off these massive interest rates. You sort of want to be clearing that debt out the way. Figure out what money you've got in place coming in and out, and whether it's fun money that you're spending on like going out and having fun all the time, or whether it's actually essential stuff. And then also start to build up an emergency fund for potentially, in this day and age, if you lose your job, when you lose your job, whatever, or if you've got something big coming on board, like you need a new car, there's a hole in the roof, a tree's gone through the window, whatever may actually happen, that you need to then have an emergency fund for. So that's three things, really, three major things that you need to get sorted out. So,
the only thing I would add to that is on the house, on the mortgage, if you were able to get, a few years ago, the rates were down into the 2s and 3s. If you have an interest rate that low on your house, I wouldn't be in a hurry to pay that off, because the interest rate is very, very cheap money. So if you can turn around and invest that in a money market account at 5%, there's no reason to pay down your house at, like, I have a 30-year fixed mortgage on my house at 2.625. I mean, that is cheapest money ever. So I'm not in a hurry to pay that down. If I had credit card debt, I would pay that down immediately, because it's 20%, it's 25%. It's very hard to get out from underneath that at that that level of rate. So yes, there's bad debt and there's good debt, and a home to me is considered good debt because it's an asset that appreciates.
Yes, exactly right. And then if you're paying that money off and you can save a little bit and get 5%, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
No, completely agree. So look, you mentioned at the beginning of this interview, you mentioned about mindset and the fact that, when you first go through all of this, your mindset's all over the place, your mind's all over the place, and it can be a little bit confusing for people. But how much does mindset actually have to do with you being financially successful, right? Being financially in a place where you're secure.
Yeah, so the money mindset and our relationship with money is a little bit, it's a little bit different topic than if you're dealing with a divorce and you're in this, raw place, and you have this mindset like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be just in trouble here financially. But the money mindset and our relationship with money is absolutely the foundation of our financial and life existence. 95% of our external realities is based off of our subconscious programming, what's happening in our subconscious, and that includes financially. So from birth to age 8, we took in from hearing our parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, coaches, teachers, whatever, things about money and life. So if we heard things like, we can't afford that, you think we're rich and money doesn't grow on trees, and we can't, you got to work, your butt off to make any money. I mean, if you heard all that language of lack and scarcity,
yeah,
that's what's playing in your subconscious mind. So you're in that place of fear, and you're in that place of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to get out from underneath this. And that's where the law of attraction kicks in, because if all you're doing is focus on your fear and your scarcity and your lack, you're going to attract more of that. More of that will come in. So the first thing is understanding what is going on in that subconscious. What stories did you hear? So a lot of times with my clients, we'll start with, okay, what are some of the conversations you heard when you were older and you remember about money? Were your parents always arguing about money? Were you always living in a place of, no, you can't have that, we can't afford that? What is some of that? So we start with identifying what that story is, our money story. And then we begin to unpack it, and we unravel it, we unlearn it, we reprogram and we relearn. And that's a process. That's a lifelong journey. That does not happen, in a month's time. We've been programmed with this for decades, right? We're not going to unlearn that quickly. But if we don't understand that relationship with money and that true money story that we have going on, we will just repeat our same behaviors, because our habits come from our, that limiting belief. And then we create these thoughts and beliefs, and then our results, and then we look at our life and go, why am I always broke?
Yeah.
And you got to look at that money story. And here's something interesting. I just heard this recently on a webinar, and I'd never heard this before, but I heard a variation of this. I'll correct myself. There was a study. They were talking about ancestral trauma
that's right.
So we have the negative bias of our mind as a result of our DNA from the caveman days. It's about surviving, not thriving. We just didn't want to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, right? We wanted to survive, and that is in part of our DNA. But this webinar that I was on, they did an experiment with mice, and they put them in this not a cage, but it was a box of sorts, and they infused like orange blossom smell into the cage. At the same time that they infused this orange blossom smell, they would shock their paws. So they would do that several times, and they would equate that now smell with shocking of paws, which was painful. Well, they then did this to the grandchildren, for lack of better words, 2 generations down of the mice. So the grandparent mice was long gone, and the mice were then the same generation, the same family line, put into this same situation where they infused the orange blossom and did not shock the paws, but the mice shocked, like they were freaked, like they were shocked. Yeah. So they felt what the grandparents felt, but they didn't have any shock to the paws. So the ancestral trauma is something that we all carry with us. So it's our parents, our grandparents, some of that, and it takes some deep work to get to the root of some of that. And some of that happens with hypnosis. Some of that happens with just a lot of work. But it's very fascinating. The neuroscience of the mind is unbelievably fascinating. But you asked about the money story and how important it is. It is absolutely, it's the foundation. If you don't have this foundation in place, it's like building up a beautiful castle on a weak foundation, it'll fall.
Yeah.
And that's why you see a lot of winners who come into millions blow through it in a short period of time because they don't have that foundation in place.
So how do you start to change your mindset then? Because I know when I was growing up, my mum and dad were, 19 and 21, right? So they had no money, they had no house, they lived with my grandparents. So as a child, money was tight. And at the beginning of all of that, and I was told, right, oh, we can't do that because we can't afford it. And you need to work hard to get money, and you need to have a good education to have money, and all of these sort of things, right? And that's my mindset. And I suppose that's why I went, right, well, I'm going to be financially savvy so that I have money and I never have to ask or go to anyone for money. It's my money. And so that's where I came from. But how do we then chat? Like, in a way, I'm quite glad it was my mindset. But now I want more money, right? I need to buy a bigger house or whatever. And yeah. So how do you start to change your mindset?
So yeah, the changing the mindset is, again, it's a lifelong journey. I mean, it takes some time to unravel that. I shouldn't say it's lifelong. It's not like you can't have any change until forever.
Yeah.
There are people who have worked through this in a very short time, like in a couple of years, and they've been able to manifest what they really want. But they've done the work. They've done the internal work, and it's about, again, sitting down, identifying your identity. What is your identity? Is your identity lack and fear and scarcity? And oh my gosh, I got to work my butt off to get anywhere in life.
Yeah.
And journal that out. Like, what does that look like? And then you poke holes in it. You say, is that reality? And it's like, no, I don't need to. There's enough money to go around for everybody. Money is just a piece of paper. Money is energy, and if I hoard it, that's fear. You've got to be smart with your money, and you've got to invest it and be mindful of it, of course. But you have to understand where those stories come from and what those stories are. So you poke holes in the false stories, and then you reprogram. And again, there's various things you can do, from hypnosis to various meditations, working with breath work. There's what's called child work, where you go back to your inner child, and understand what that little inner child was thinking. And it's a lot of work with sometimes therapists, sometimes coaches, and getting to the root of that, and then again finding the falses in that story. And then what I'll do with my clients is like, okay, if now you have this story, you understand what you grew up with, what happens in your life if nothing changes? If nothing changes, nothing changes, right? Yeah. So if nothing changes in your external world, if you don't make changes in your thoughts and things, your life will not change. So you get the leverage of, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to live like this the rest of my life. And then you look at, okay, what if it does change? What if I do realize the abundance and the prosperity, and there's opportunities everywhere, and money is just it gives you a sense of freedom. It gives you choices. It's abundant. It's everywhere. And if you have that mindset, and you look at the world that way, and you think, okay, what would my world look like? What does my life look like if I am completely financially abundant? I have money freedom, time freedom, and you get a true emotional feel of what that looks like. You then start to work towards that, and you think on that, you meditate on that, you visualize that. I mean, this conversation can be 2 hours long, but it's really, I mean, that's kind of the high level of where things need to start. But it starts with identifying what your story is.
Yeah. Yeah. So identifying whether what you were told as a child or as you were growing up, that you are now living as an adult.
Right.
And and dealing with as an adult, really. And then having that awareness to be able to go, well, hang on a minute, let's sit back. Why am I worried about spending $10 on, I don't know, a burger, for example, when I have the money and I aren't like, why am I saying, and is it because buying a burger is unhealthy for me, which would be a valid point, or is it because I feel as though, I don't have that money or whatever, and I can't afford it, when actually you can afford it. And so sometimes you might want to just splash out on expensive dinner or whatever.
Yeah. And every person's different. Every situation is different. If you're in that position where you have the funds and you've got no credit card debt and you're in a place where you're comfortable, then yes, absolutely. You work hard. But again, every person's situation is different. You've got to just navigate that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Blimey. So, so that's mindset and how that can actually influence you being successful at keeping money and having money, or
and that's one factor. I mean, certainly there's the mechanical piece of understanding investing and understanding your credit and understanding how to just deal with your debt. I mean, there are the mechanical pieces of money, but the mindset is part of that puzzle for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, right? Because I see people who just get money and they just spend it, right? And I sit there and I go, oh my God, you've only just been given you've won like 10 grand or whatever, and it's been spent within a week. And I go, what did you spend it on? And they don't really know what they've spent it on, right? And you go, why? Can I have 10 grand, please? I think I would spend it a bit better. But anyway, that's mindset, and that comes down to mindset, doesn't it? And like easy come, easy go, right? Is like one thing.
Their money story certainly can be play a part in that, and that's why, like I mentioned earlier, the lotto winners who come into millions of dollars overnight, they're not their money story, their money thermostat is set at a certain level, and they're just subconsciously sabotaging themselves.
Yeah.
They're not knowingly, throwing money away, but they subconsciously are by being reckless with their finances.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. Now, I want to delve into online stuff, right? Because there are so many gurus that are online, right? Invest your money here, invest your money there. Oh, hey, this is how you're going to make $1,000 or whatever a week or whatever. What do you suggest people can use how do we filter out all of this guff, for want of a better word, right? All of this false news or whatever. How do you filter out the online stuff so that you can actually understand where there are safe places to invest your money? Or, if you want to be a risky investor, that's fine, but not on some dodgy pyramid scheme that's online. How do you find out about where to invest?
At the end of the day, you want to look at the main invest. If you're going to self-manage your money and not hire a financial advisor, Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, they're going to have the mutual funds, the index funds, the ETFs, the money market accounts, the bond funds. They're going to have all of what you need. If you are, online is a bunch of noise. There are a lot of different things that are online. And if you cannot explain, I always say this, if you can't explain a particular product to a fourth grader, then you don't understand it well enough yourself to invest in it. Yeah. And there's different insurance products and annuity products. And I'm not saying those are bad. I'm just saying if you don't understand them, because there's pros and cons to them. And if you don't understand them completely, you shouldn't be investing in them until you do learn about them. Once you learn about them, if it still makes sense for you, then fine, go for it. But don't be pushed into a product or something that you don't know really intimately just because you're being pushed into it, or a friend says, oh, this is fantastic. Do your due diligence, trust your intuition and your gut, speak to experts, I've got to imagine that you've got a connection with a financial advisor or financial coach somewhere in your world. Reach out to them. If you don't, reach out to a family member who works with a financial advisor and say, can I have, an hour of your time? Most financial advisors will give you an hour complimentary of time, and they'll walk you through like, okay, here's your situation. Here's where, what we, suggest that you do. And at least you're working with a financial advisor who has the best interest of you in mind. A CFP is obligated by that certification that they have to act in the best, benefit of the client. So just be mindful of who you look at and talk to, and again, trust that intuition. If it feels squirrely, it probably is, and you just got to walk away. But yeah, stay offline. There is so much noise, and there's so much stuff you've got to just be careful of.
And be careful of that friend who basically turns around and says, oh, I've invested in this and I've made X, Y, and Z and it's great and blah, blah, blah. It may be great and it might be awesome, right? But just go and do your own investigation before you actually plow in like, $1,000, $5,000, because that's how these pyramid schemes and stuff like that sort of start, where, somebody near the top of the pyramid schemes made a lot of money, and then they start to actually sell it out. And the way that they make the money is to sell out, stuff to people below the pyramid scheme. And then it all filters up to the person at the top. And you guys at the bottom don't seem to make that much money, if any money, or it's just even harder for you to make money. So, just be careful and do your investigation. Do your due diligence. That's what you're saying, isn't it, really?
Yep, absolutely. You've got to do that. No one cares more about your money than you do.
Well, exactly. You're earning it, so you might as well try and keep hold of it and try and get more money.
Yeah. Well, you just don't want to. You don't want to do things that are reckless, are not thought out. You've got to again do that homework, and it's out there. There's all types of wonderful opportunities to learn from very, talented and smart experts out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. So look, how do people get in contact with you if they want to get in contact with you to like talk about financial coaching or to just ask you any questions that they may have had after listening to this podcast?
Yeah, sure. My website's the best place to start. It's just my name. It's PattiHandy.com, PattiHandy.com. On my contact page, there is my calendar, and you can book a complimentary 30-minute call with me.
Yeah.
And that's right there on the website. And we will then have a conversation, and I can find out more about your situation and, put you on a roadmap and explore how it looks to work together. And if it doesn't make sense, I will tell you. And if it does, I will tell you. And if it doesn't make sense, I will tell you don't talk to, this person or that person. I'm in the States, so I only have contacts within the States. I don't have contacts overseas or to different countries, but at least you can get started with some basic knowledge for sure.
Yeah, no, defo. And look, final question for you. Final question in all of this. What's a piece of advice that you've been given that you still use today?
A piece of advice that I use today, that's a good question. Are you talking like from a financial perspective or just life?
Financial, in life in general, who knows? I'm sort of collecting these little nuggets.
Yeah. Gosh, I've had so many over the years. What's been a really impactful one? I would say something we've talked about just a little bit ago, and that is to always do your homework when it comes to any kind of, if I'm looking at the financial piece, which is what the topic of this conversation is, always do your homework. I've made mistakes, even though I was the person in the marriage that managed the money and I knew investing. Post-divorce, when things were chaotic and emotions were high and I wasn't thinking right, I made some mistakes, and a friend told me, oh, you should get into this. And I'm like, okay. And because I was trying to catch up financially, as a divorce, everything's cut in half and you lose your assets. And so I made some mistakes and lost, money. And if I had just slowed down and did more research and didn't invest or do things that were things that I really looked at in depth, I would have been in a different place today. So take your time. Don't feel pressured. If someone's trying to press you into something, just walk away. So that would be probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. And if it's too good to be true, it normally is too good to be true.
That's exactly right.
Cool. Look, Patti, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
For having me. Appreciate it.
There's been some good tips there from you about because finance for me is like was one of the biggest, scariest things, because then you're on your own, right? That's it. Buck stops at you as a single parent. So, and you got to make sure that the kids are all happy and everything's fine. And it's about making sure their life stays normal as much as it can be. And in this day and age and what's going on in the world and stuff, financial crisis wise, you've really just got to get on top of things, haven't you?
You've got to be aware of, yes. And like you said, due diligence and talk to an expert.
Yeah, defo. Well, look, thank you. I'm going to let you get on with your day. Thanks ever so much.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate having being on your show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.